All right, no further discussion. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Bratton.
Aye.
Hudson. Aye. Gregory. Aye. Henderson. Aye. Nuremberg.
Aye.
Schroer. Aye. Weber. Aye. 7-0.
By your votes of 7-0, the bill passes. All right, there's no sub for, so I make a motion that we bring up Senate Bill 150. Can I get a second? All right. Discussion on the bill. See none. All right. I make a motion that we do pass Senate Bill 150. Have a second. Any further discussion? See none. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Bratton.
Aye.
Hudson. Aye. Gregory. Aye. Henderson. Aye. Nuremberg. Aye. Schroer. Aye. Weber. Aye.
7-0. The bill passes. I make a motion that we move out of executive session. Can I get a second? You have a second? We're out of executive session. Now we're going to move into hearing bills. Senator Coleman was not able to make it, so we will not be hearing Senate Bill 56. We'll go ahead and do Senate Bill 160 because I know Senator Hudson has another hearing to go to. Senator, please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Brad Hudson, representing Missouri's 33rd Senatorial District, here to present to you Senate Bill 160. Senate Bill 160 is a short, narrowly written bill that solves a very specific problem. This act prohibits public institutions of higher learning, such as state colleges, community colleges, and technical schools, from taking adverse action against a student association because of the association's belief or the actions of its leaders. Specifically, these institutions shall not deny a belief-based student association, such as a political, ideological, or religious association, any benefits that are available to other student groups, including access to campus facilities and communication channels. A belief-based student association shall be responsible for defining its own mission, beliefs, and conduct standards, and may seek relief in a judicial or administrative proceeding against an institution that violates the provisions of the Act. The importance of protecting belief-based groups on college campuses has resulted in the passage of protective laws in 19 states, as well as a passage of a bill on this issue in the U.S. House of Representatives last fall. Many people are here to testify in favor of this legislation. I have received letters of support from Campus Crusade for Christ, InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, Christian Legal Society, and FIRE, to name a few. Give you a little background here. I'll be brief. In 2023, the Missouri House passed a very similar bill, HB 136, by a vote of 108 to 42. That bill was then voted do pass by the Senate General Laws Committee and by the Senate Fiscal Oversight Committee, and was placed on the Senate calendar for floor action, but too late in the session to get across the finish line. Last year, HB 1518, an identical bill to the bill you have before you today, passed the House by an overwhelming margin, 100 to 40, but was not assigned to a committee in the Senate until very late in the session. So far, 19 states have passed legislation like Senate Bill 160, designed to protect students and taxpayers alike, and I look forward to Missouri becoming the 20th state to adopt this common sense measure. SB 160 codifies existing practice at our colleges and universities so as to protect pluralism and avoid the potential for needless litigation that the state would almost certainly lose to the detriment of Missouri taxpayers, and I am happy to take questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions? See none. Anyone? Can I get a show of hands who's here to testify in support? Okay, testify against? Okay, all right. We'll go ahead and start with those in favor of the bill. Please come forward. Remember to fill out a witness form for anything that you are testifying for. So please come forward.
Good morning, Chairman and Committee. My name is Timothy Faber, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. I am here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 160. More clearly, I'm here to speak in favor of religious liberty. The First Amendment to our United States Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. While that amendment does say Congress and not the state legislature, I would hope that this legislature would conduct themselves in keeping with the principles set forth in this great Constitution that has guided our nation and protected our rights for nearly 2.5 centuries. With that in mind, the government has no right to prohibit the free exercise of religion. Thus, if a religious body determines that certain tenets of faith are to be upheld, the government has no right to override that, except in very rare and clearly defined cases. Students are not exempt from this free exercise of religion. If a student organization determines to follow the tenets of a particular faith, they have the right, as citizens within these United States, to practice that religion and to determine who can be leaders of that organization according to those religious tenets. Additionally, the First Amendment guarantees the right of freedom of speech. If an organization has taken a public position on some topic, that position cannot be denied or restricted or compromised by demanding that certain persons holding different views be allowed to be a part of that organization, and certainly not as leaders. To force any organization to allow leadership which disagrees with their own tenets and public positions is to force a message on that organization that violates its own freedom of speech collectively and of its members individually. The First Amendment also guarantees the right of the people to peaceably assemble. But if any organization is forced to allow members who are in disagreement with it, and to even allow them to serve as leaders, how can that be peaceful? The organization would have internal conflict, and the rights of those who originally formed the organization would be trampled upon. Certainly, as an organization carries out its purpose over time, it may adjust its own parameters for membership and leadership, and they have the right to do so. But for the government, or any government-funded entity, or really for anybody outside of that organization, to force such changes is a violation of the people's right to peacefully assemble. Thus, this bill, Senate Bill 160, is merely clarifying and codifying what the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution already guarantees, because we are apparently some who need to be reminded of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else to testify in support, please come forward.
Good morning. My name's Curtis Cole, and I serve with Chi Alpha Campus Ministries USA. I'm here to stand in support of Senate Bill 160, primarily from a religious liberty context. First off, Chi Alpha is the campus ministry arm of the Assemblies of God nationwide. Here in Missouri, there are 445 Assembly of God churches with about a Sunday morning of attendance of 122,000 on any given Sunday. Chi Alpha, on the local campus, has chapters in Missouri on 7 different universities and 275 different campuses across the country. Everyone is welcome to come and worship at a Chi Alpha gathering. Students study God's Word, they worship Jesus, and they're encouraged to serve their campus and the world beyond. First, a little bit of national context. For many years, Chi Alpha chapters have been repeatedly faced with being kicked off of campus on universities around America, but in particular, even here in our home state of Missouri. Sister organizations have been kicked off of the University of Iowa and Wayne State University, resulting in years of expensive and difficult litigation. The question is why? Well, simply because those religious groups ask their student leaders to embrace their group's faith. I'd like to share two specific examples before getting, two general examples before getting specific into Missouri. The first one is at the University of Virginia. Our local chapter was ridiculed at student government meetings and in the student newspaper for simply holding biblically based views. Later, our chapter of over 425 students was threatened to lose its club status. And then out west at Wenatchee Valley Community College, our local group was kicked off campus and denied access to the college campus going forward because of our association with the National Assemblies of God Church. So why is Senate Bill 160 so crucial for Missouri? I see three simple reasons. Number one, students in Missouri should be able to follow their sincerely held religious beliefs and organize their student groups and activities around those sincerely held beliefs. Number two, I'd like to suggest that college administrators are facing pressure by student governments and activists in our communities demanding that religious groups be expelled for their religious convictions. Those administrators need a clear, firm rule like Senate Bill 160 that gives them the foundation to push back against the voices of unconstitutional discrimination against religion. And then finally, this legislation is valuable because I see it as proactive instead of reactive. Instead of waiting for issues like this to surface again at a campus in Missouri, this legislation clearly states that the definition of what it means to be free and religious in Missouri. I believe a favorable vote for Senate Bill 160 demonstrates respect for unique belief systems. It is an affirmation of our U.S. Constitution, and it supports religious tolerance in our great state. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else to testify in support, please come forward.
Oh, I better give my witness form here before I start speaking. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Lance Kinzer. I'm here on behalf of First Amendment Partnership, where we have the privilege of working with some of the nation's largest religious organizations on matters of common concern. I want to note the University of Iowa situation was mentioned somewhat in passing. And that case involved two lawsuits. One, a small evangelical campus ministry, Business Leaders in Christ, and InterVarsity, a larger campus ministry, both that were removed from campus because of their standards around leadership. And what does a leadership standard mean? Just put most basically, this means that religious organizations on campus would like those who speak a religious message on behalf of the organization, those who lead their Bible studies, those who lead their meetings, to share the religious beliefs of the organization. This is commonplace, it's common sense. In fact, the law in general allows religious organizations to use religious standards to determine who their leaders are in a host of contexts. This standard is so clear that when it was violated in Iowa, two cases went up to the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, the circuit in which Missouri sits, and they found that not only was there a violation of the rights of these students, but that it was such a clear-cut right that the individual administrators at the University of Iowa could be held personally liable. Now, ultimately, the state of Iowa subrogated to defend the almost $2 million judgment that was entered on behalf of the student groups that were discriminated against. Now, that whole story, it's a cautionary tale. It might lead us to think, well, why do we need this bill if the Constitution is so clear? And there's a couple reasons for that. One reason is that even when students win in these litigations, like they did at Iowa, like they did at Wayne State, like recently in a similar circumstance at the high school level, Fellowship of Christian Athletes won before the Ninth Circuit recently out in California. Even when they win, this lengthy litigation to ultimately get a piece of paper from a court saying they shouldn't have done that to you when you're a student club leader who perhaps has been preparing to be in leadership for 3 years, it's your year, you're swinging into senior year, you're excited about club day, and all of a sudden an administrator tells you, nope, you guys can't go to club day, you can't meet, and by the time you as a kid figure out, who do I talk to, what do I do, how do I get this to court, and even if it's just 2 or 3 months later that a district court judge says, yeah, they shouldn't have done that, your year is ruined in terms of something that you put a lot of time, effort, and energy into, so it's not good. The other thing is there is a little gap in the law, a very small one at this point, but let me just say this, and I've been going for a while now already, so I'm going to try to move quickly, but really, going back 50 years, the law was absolutely crystal clear. It was crystal clear that you can't discriminate against a campus student group based upon their viewpoint. That's Healy v. James from 1972. You know, the interesting thing about Healy was that was a case where you had a group that was protesting the Vietnam War. It was the Students for a Democratic Society. Their national organization actually called for the violent overthrow of the government of the United States, and the University of Central Connecticut said, we can't have this radical left-wing group on our campus, we're kicking them off. And the U.S. Supreme Court said, even though their national group has said some things that are problematic, we have to look at this specific group. What have they said? What have they done? Obviously, if they engage in incitement to riot, if they engage in illegal activity, you can deal with them, but just because they hold beliefs about the Vietnam War that the conservative campus administration at the University of Connecticut disagreed with, you can't kick them off campus. A lot of times the question is asked, does this bill somehow give aid and comfort to radical right-wing or radical left-wing campus groups? And the answer is, those groups are not going to litigate under this statute. These groups are just going to go back to the long, unbroken line of precedent, started with Healy v. James. You cannot discriminate against a campus group based upon viewpoint. If you're going to have campus groups, all viewpoints, as long as they act peaceably, get to be on campus. That's just reality. The next case is an interesting one because it was right here in Missouri. Widmar v. Vincent, 1981, an 8-1 opinion where the UMKC said a small evangelical campus group couldn't meet on campus because, like, the taxpayers are paying for this building. They're like paying for the air in the room, I suppose, however you want to view it, and it's an Establishment Clause violation. And 8-1, the U.S. Supreme Court said no, that those groups, regardless of their viewpoint, regardless of whether religious viewpoint or secular viewpoint, they can use campus facilities in the same way as anyone else can. Then in the 90s, so we have 70s, 80s, and now in the 90s, one of the questions that often comes up is, okay, we're fine. They can go to club day, they can use facilities, but what's really galling is that they have access to student activity fee funds. Well, first of all, a lot of times people say those are taxpayer dollars. No, student activity fee funds are student dollars that every student is going to end up supporting some clubs they agree with, some clubs they don't disagree with. And what makes that fair is that all viewpoints get to be represented. What would be unfair is to say we're going to collect student activity fee funds, but the university administrators or some small subgroup of students is going to decide which viewpoint, who can apply to receive those funds. The U.S. Supreme Court agreed with that with absolute clarity in Rosenberger v. University of Virginia in 1995. And I'll close with this, the one little hole is that in 2010 there was a 5-4 opinion by Justice Ginsburg that said if you have if you have an all-comers policy, if you have a policy that says no student group can have any standard for who its leaders are, then that doesn't violate the Constitution. Now, that's an absurd policy. Almost no university actually wants to have an all-comers policy. No university wants to say the college Republicans have to let a Democrat be president. No group wants to say the campus equality group has to let somebody who opposes same-sex marriage be their president. It just doesn't work. And so universities almost never actually adopt an all-comers policy. But what happens is that administrators or students who have oversight over these campus groups who don't understand the law see CLS v. Martinez, they say, oh, oh, we can restrict leadership standards. And they do. They do it in a ham-fisted way that ultimately results in litigation, and you get the University of Iowa with the taxpayers of the state on the hook for a $2 million judgment. So the point of this bill is simply clarity. 19 states have passed it. It hasn't resulted in any of the unintended consequences that folks are sometimes concerned about. And one of the key things, and what I'll leave it with, is that this bill is content neutral. It protects belief-based groups on both sides. And the political winds change. Which groups are ascendant, leadership at campuses change, and this protects the groups on the left just as much as it does the groups on the right. It has to do so in order to be constitutionally appropriate, but that's, from my perspective, this is a common sense measure. It's good for students. It's promotive of pluralism. The answer to speech you don't like is more speech, not restricting the speech of other people. And I think Missouri would do well to join numerous other states who have already adopted this policy. So I appreciate the committee's time. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? See none. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else to testify in support, please come forward. You can leave the witness forms on the desk and they'll get them, so just to make it easier.
Thank you, Chair Bratton, members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Logan Spina. I'm legal counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. The form I just turned in says Lansdowne, Virginia, but I was born and raised in Peculiar, Missouri, so always happy to be here supporting freedom in our great state. ADF's Center for Academic Freedom defends the rights of students, teachers, and professors at America's public universities, and we often, for that reason, represent student groups which face unconstitutional burdens on their associational activity, and SB160 would greatly ameliorate that problem within the state of Missouri. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Mr. Kinzer just said, and so I'm going to try to be very brief in light of his excellent explanation for why the committee should unanimously support this bill. 2 brief points. One is that this bill is good for students. So it ensures that students enjoy what the Constitution already guarantees to them. So that is, the right protected by the First Amendment is the right of individuals to associate to further their personal beliefs. That's what Healy said, the case Mr. Kinzer talked about. And that freedom presumes a group's ability to control its composition. That's what association is. To preserve the group's ability to advocate public or private viewpoints. That's the Supreme Court statement in Boy Scouts of America versus Dale. This is something that students are already supposed to enjoy, and as Mr. Kinzer sketched, there's a lot of good Supreme Court precedent on the issue, but CLS versus Martinez in 2010 has served as a little bit of a fly in the ointment. And legally, Mr. Kinzer's correct that it is a very narrow opinion. It actually only protects universities when they adopt a true all-comers policy, which is something that students and universities alike generally don't want. However, because of that case, it can lead lower courts and district courts to fail to adequately protect students' freedom. And that's a really good reason why it's important to get a law like this on the books to sort of cut that problem, nip that problem in the bud, so that students don't lose the opportunity to actually work with their student groups, as Mr. Kinzer also explained. ADF right now is currently representing Young Americans for Freedom chapter at the University of Buffalo in New York. The adverse action there was different from what this bill would stop, but what happened there was the student association just banned all student groups from having affiliations with national groups. And they were targeting that club's association with the broader YAF, Young Americans for Freedom organization. Now that's something that Healy versus James would directly prohibit, because that's what happened there. They tried to ban them because of their association with SDS. But even though that's true, the district court dismissed their case just in December, citing CLS. So it's the sort of logic of CLS that gets abused, even though as the Eighth Circuit's precedent that's binding here says it isn't as broad as people think. Quick point number 2, and for this reason, this is a good bill for Missouri's institutions. Because CLS is really narrower than it is, it leads institutions to do things like they did in Iowa that get them into trouble, right? CLS only protects universities if there is a true all-comers policy, but nobody wants that. We want to be able to have fraternities and sororities. We want to be able to have religious groups. We want to be able to have groups for students who are coming from other countries to be able to associate with one another. There's all kinds of reasons why we don't want all-comers policies, and for that reason, most institutions don't have them. But when they try then to sort of have their cake and eat it too by letting some groups limit their leadership, but not all groups, that generates liability, and this bill would stop that from happening. So we urge the committee to approve the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Good to see you. Anyone have any questions? See none. Appreciate it. Anyone else testify in support? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jamie Morris here representing the Missouri Catholic Conference here in support once again of Senate Bill 160. Want to thank the senator for handling this bill once again. I don't know how many years we're up to now on this, changing sides of the building and everything, but no, I just want to reiterate what other folks have said. Obviously, to us, this is very common sense that for our Catholic groups on campus, obviously, if you want to go and evangelize, you want to bring everyone in. You'd be pretty poor, bringing folks in or being, exclusionary. But when it comes to leadership of these groups, obviously, you also want someone that knows and believes in the tenets of the faith, and that a group shouldn't be penalized for choosing leaders in such a way. And so, to us, this is a very common sense bill. And again, want to thank the senator and want to thank the committee for hearing this. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? See none. Thank you. Anyone else to testify in support? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. My name is Gary Hollis. I'm the State Director for Americans for Prosperity here in Missouri. I'm here today to testify in support of SB160. As a national organization, we operate in 36 states around the country, and as a result, we get to see problems that arise not just here in Missouri, but across the country. As others have testified, this has been a problem throughout the nation, and 19 other states have moved to make efforts to change it through legislation as a result. We frequently have students come to us throughout the country because they have been denied funds, meeting space, or a club designation, all on the grounds of their political affiliation or sometimes religious affiliation. AFP has often opened our offices to many of these students. We've used our funds to provide them with resources that they should be able to receive from their college and university because they are paying into it through their student fees. These affected students are most often conservative or libertarian political groups or Christian or Jewish faith groups. Many times there's little ideological variance found among college faculty, and sometimes just the refusal of a faculty sponsor can deprive a student group of the resources that they're paying for and their ability to fulfill their college experience through joining a club. While this discrimination is most often found from far-left faculty, I do applaud this bill for being all-encompassing. No student of any political ideology or faith should be discriminated against on Missouri's college campuses. As such, this bill should receive overwhelming bipartisan support. The freedom of speech and freedom of religion was written by our founders into the First Amendment for a reason. I encourage members of this body to reject any effort to suppress our students' freedom of speech or religion on campus. These freedoms are something that should be guaranteed in Missouri through all avenues of life and must be guaranteed to our students on college campuses. I will also point out that universities are not private entities. They are public universities that they receive taxpayer funds. One condition for receiving taxpayer funds should be a commitment to the principles found in our U.S. Constitution. These beliefs are held in such high regard for our organization that we included bills like this one in our legislative agenda that we've shared with many of you, and we plan to score on this issue accordingly when we release our scorecard post-session. In conclusion, AFP Missouri applauds this bill and respectfully requests this committee to advance it to the full body. As an organization, we will remain committed to the principles of free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, and freedom of press for all of Missouri's college students. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Hold on. Anyone have any questions? I guess not. See none. Anyone else to testify in support? Anyone to testify in opposition, please come forward.
Good morning, Senators. Nimrod Chappell on behalf of the Missouri State Conference of the NAACP. I appreciate the opportunity to present testimony on behalf of not just the NAACP, but I have to tell you, the families that will be affected if this bill is allowed to move forward. I think it interesting to just point out a few notes. First of all, as a lawyer who represents people who've been injured, cheated, and mistreated all the time, I don't hear complaints from families who are concerned that their kids have had some lack of ability to voice themselves in a religious context on college campuses. I hear all the time about the discriminatory treatment that is present on college campuses, in our elementary schools, in state government, and in public society just generally. So I find it very interesting that we're here today to talk about a bill for religious freedoms, to have a special carve-out in public institutions to ensure that no one's mistreated, even though there is not some crushing wave of litigation. And if you listen to any of these national folks who came into Missouri to reshape our policy, you can hear clearly that the law has already been defined, and they would like to prevent or forestall litigation. Let me suggest to you that that is probably not what's going to happen. That subsection B that allows for, talks about the expression of these ideologies is vast. If anything, I think that you're going to end up with a lot of litigation, that you're going to burden the public institutions, and that might be the part B of my testimony today, because where are their public institutions? If it's true that this bill has highlighted an issue that is so intense, where are our organizations? You know that they're in the building. They have lobbyists here. They have their presidents who come down all the time. And even though there's been a retreat from the idea that we should have equity and inclusion, and I'll talk about that in just a second, even though we're not going to get to Senate Bill 56 today, I think that we have to be realistic about who it is that we're trying to protect. If we're going to protect the children that are in these institutions, what is it? I think the Latin term is in loco parentis, right? They are wards of the university. The university has an obligation to protect them. Let the universities do their job. I think that not only will you advance litigation, but you're also going to truly reinforce segregation. Now, you ask, how is that going to happen? I think even now that most of the religious institutions that you've heard from today still have problems in their own ranks with inclusion. Missouri historically has had a horrible problem with inclusion, not just from the Dred Scott case where we couldn't figure out that a human being is actually a human being, but you could look at skin color and determine who was and who wasn't entitled to participate in democracy. Here we are asked to pay our taxes, and I understand the argument that this is not a tax issue in terms of how these student government funds are going to be used, but it is a pay issue. We are paying to attend a public university that's supposed to be open and inclusive, allowed for everybody to participate. And the truth is that the religious organizations that we're talking about under this bill have no intention of doing that. And how do we know that, right? They're not saying it. It'll be very interesting when we get to Senate Bill 56, when we get to the next bill that talks about whether or not we're going to talk about 1619 in educational settings, where the national organizations, where the religious organizations are to ensure that discrimination is eliminated there as well. If we're going to do for one, we got to do for the other. It is the golden rule. Don't let Missouri be another beacon or just fall in line with this cancer of racism that is already in our culture. We should be doing everything to ensure that people are treated just like people, not carving out exceptions such as this one.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Well, I mean, I know I've heard of many universities, actually enacting segregation for, ensuring that people of color have the capability to escape other races. Where that, so is that segregation not occurring already, but willfully occurring in a university setting?
Senator, you're going to have to put some context to that, because when I take your question underneath my lived and educated experiences, I can tell you that Missouri has a long history of segregation. You think about Milton Turner, who had to educate black kids on the Mississippi River because it was illegal to actually
I'm not talking
here.
about 50 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm talking about currently. It's happening in universities where segregation is occurring.
Are you saying that the universities are segregating students?
Yeah, absolutely. For people of color to have a place to go with their own, with their own race that they want.
Two things, Senator. First of all, there's only one race. It's just the human race.
Well, it's the human race. I
Right.
totally
So
agree. But
the
it's
idea that
occurring.
people are going to be divided by color, by a public institution. I'm from Missouri. Show me.
Okay.
It doesn't happen.
So will you put out a public statement if it's occurring that you come out against such policies?
I'm telling you, show me. Right?
Okay, what, I will show you, I don't have the documentation, but I will show you, will you put out a statement from your organization that it is in fact wrong and should not be engaged upon?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
What, I asked you the
just
question.
Tell me, Senator.
That
tell me what it is that
segregation
you're
is
saying.
occurring.
Where?
Is it wrong or is it?
Where?
It's happening on numerous universities
Name
all
one.
across this nation. I will. I'll bring it
No,
to
I
your.
mean, right now, Senator. If you're asking me,
It was occurring
you're
in-
asking me if I'll issue a public statement about discrimination or harassment.
You said
in
if
the
I can
state.
show you, I will show you. Will you put out a public statement?
You can't even tell me what you're talking about.
Okay.
So show me, and then we'll talk about it. I'm happy and I'm available. You
Okay.
have, I'm sure, my contact information, and I'm available all the time for you.
Okay. All right. I'll be happy to provide that information, and I hope that you will then follow up with saying that it's incorrect policy to have those policies.
Segregation is illegal. Period.
Well, that's what's happening in numerous, and I know I've seen the reports of it. Okay. That's
But
fine. I'll
you
be
can't
happy
name one here, right? And this is the problem with this bill and this line of bills, is that people are going forward with these talking points, these ideas that are unverified, unsubstantiated, and when we try to get down to the point, we can't even find the facts. So here you are asking me for a statement about segregation and its viability in the state of Missouri right now from a public institution. I ask you for the facts. You're a senator on one of the most powerful committees in the state, and you don't have them. You can't even name
Oh,
them.
I will have them. I
No,
didn't
no,
bring the
you-
facts with them.
You can't name them. That's the thing. We're here talking about this bill right now, right? We're talking about a whole line of bills that are going to eliminate the ability of people to participate in a fair way in institutions that they pay for with their tax dollars. And you're asking me this question.
Yeah.
Not only is it unfair, sir, I believe
hold on.
it's
I
disingenuous.
asked you, is it wrong to have these sorts of policies? Is it or isn't it?
I already told you that the law in Missouri
Is
says
it?
that there is
Yes or
no
no?
segregation that shall be allowed
Okay.
in public
So
institutions.
if it's occurring, of which I said it should be wrong, and I would hope that you would put out a statement thereof.
I don't even know what. Show me.
Okay,
Show me.
I will. I
let's
said I will
do a
show
joint
you.
statement, because I tell you what,
Okay.
when I find other instances about discrimination in the state, it would be nice to have a senator who's willing to stand up for the people in his state to ensure that the black, the brown, the female, the aged, the disabled, the perception of any of those in the above, including the religious, have an ally instead
Okay.
of somebody who's trying to take away their rights.
So you think this bill is taking away someone's rights?
I think it's given a special carve-out to a group of people who don't need it. There's not an issue about religious discrimination that's fairly presented itself in any relevant context. What you hear about people is, as one of your supporters suggested, is that we should not engage in any more litigation. I'm telling you that this is going to increase the amount of litigation. They say that it's well-settled law. So what are we doing if it's already enshrined within the Constitution and the policies of these universities? And I also point out that the universities aren't even here to support this measure. I think that's telling.
Well, I think it is telling that they don't support the First Amendment and people's capability to associate amongst their faith on campus.
Why don't you think they support that? You would think that there would be a ton of litigation. Show me the cases.
There is a ton of litigation.
Where? No, there's not. They just testified that there's not. They said that there has been litigation in the past, but it fails in comparison to the number of cases that have been brought forward by people who have tried to attend universities, going all the way back to Lloyd Gaines, because they've been excluded on the basis of how God made them.
Okay.
How's that for a religious exception?
Well, where was the NAACP on Amendment 3?
What does that have to do with this?
I mean, you're wanting to broaden the scope of where we're at with, making sure people are considered people. Where was the NAACP on Amendment 3?
We believe that human beings must be in charge of their body as a people
Okay,
who've been
thank you. I appreciate
subjugated,
it. Any
as a
further-
people who've been subjugated
Thank
to slavery and every other vile thing that you can do to a human body. We believe that everybody has the ability.
Dehumanizing another human being. That's exactly right. It's
No,
wrong.
well, that's what happened to us, and so we think that everyone needs to be in charge of their
So
own body.
happening into the unborn is a better situation. Okay.
Senator, whenever you want to have a discussion on abortion, we can.
Okay. Well, I mean, you just said your state where you stand, Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
I'll look forward to that evidence that you're going to bring forward, Senator.
Oh, absolutely. I look forward to it.
Thanks.
Any further testimony against? Seeing none. Anyone for informational purposes? Seeing none. Any closing statements? Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Thank you. Sage Quorum with the American Civil Liberties Union of Missouri in opposition to this bill. The bill is really, the question at issue is not whether students have freedom of belief or the ability to associate on campus, but really it's about the taxpayer dollars that all students are paying equally into and the discriminatory use of those funds. So that's our opposition to this bill. Thank you.
So you're in opposition?
Correct.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Anyone for informational purposes? We've got a lot of opposition. Well, I said opposition. No one raised their hand or stood up. That is absolutely what happened.
Good morning. Sharon Gowey-Jones here on behalf of Promo, Missouri, in opposition to the bill. I wanted to clarify a couple of things about this bill that are different than the other 19 states that have passed some sort of religious organization anti-discrimination law. This bill, unlike those, does two very important things. One, subsection B, and all of these are in the disjunctive. If you look at where the meat of the bill is, subsection B prevents discrimination based on the expression of viewpoints by either the association or its members. That is not leadership. That is not having something in your bylaws like a tenet of faith. That is how that is taken and used on the campus. And to me, that means that we are now creating a conflict of laws between our anti-discrimination laws and things like the Missouri Human Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act federally, and what we are telling people on campus they can and cannot do. That is different than what we see in most other states. I believe Louisiana is the only other state that has that kind of language in it. Given the fact that all of those are in the disjunctive, the testimony that you've heard about this being about leadership is inaccurate as to the actual language of our proposed bill because of that subsection B. So please take a look at that. The other thing that is different than all of the case law that we've heard talked about and most of the testimony is that this goes beyond religious freedom. This is also about political and ideological organizations, which means that we are not simply protecting people's freedom of association under the First Amendment for religious purposes. We are protecting any kind of ideology. That is incredibly broad and goes far beyond both the case law and the laws that we see in other states, which are primarily focused on religious freedoms. So we oppose the bill in general, but I just wanted to point out that those two pieces in particular make this very different than what the courts have been talking about and what we see in other states. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? See none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in opposition? Please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is David Lee Brush. I'm with the Missouri Equity Education Partnership, and we would like to go on record in opposition to the bill. We have nothing more of substance to add because the people who've already said basically everything we're going to say. We do believe that organizations on campus should be able to democratically elect their leadership and reflective of their ideology. And nobody is any one thing. You can be more than one. You can be LGBTQ and a Christian. You can be more than one thing and be in a club and still want to have that kind of leadership. So, like I said, everybody's pretty much said everything we're going to say. We just want to be on record. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone? Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition?
Hi, my name is Malcolm Gerhardt, and I'm speaking in opposition. I want to briefly talk about I'm a member of a student organization on a public campus, a public university, and speaking from personal experience, this is a non-issue, right? When we talk about leadership, the people of the groups are electing their leadership. The people are going to elect people that align with the leadership, with what they want their leadership to be, and more times than not, those people's beliefs or those people's identities are going to align with those groups' beliefs and identities. And if it doesn't, that more so speaks to the people, the democratically elected people, and the people in that group more so than the group's ideals. People and groups change over times, and I think we should allow that to happen. And also, I want to briefly talk about your point about the segregated groups on campus. There aren't any. If any, there are student groups that are dedicated to marginalized groups. They don't ban people who are not part of that group. They allow all people to come in, but they are specifically focused for marginalized groups to have a place to be on a predominantly white campus, a predominantly cis or straight campus, and it just allows them to have a space. Of course, they're not banning people from their space. They're just having a space for themselves. So I just want to say that I am in opposition for this bill. Are there any questions?
Anyone have any questions? See none. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else to testify in opposition? See none. Anyone to testify for informational purposes? See none. Senator.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for your time. I would encourage the committee to look at the 19 other states that have passed legislation that's very similar to this, if not exactly the same, and the bipartisan nature that it has been passed by in some other states. And again, thank you very much for the time today. I appreciate it.
All right, that concludes the hearing on 160. We'll go to Senator Henderson's Senate Bill 68. You may begin when you're ready. Yes, that's pretty easy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. For the record, Senator Mike Henderson from the 3rd Senatorial District. I'm hoping that you got the Senate committee sub that I had handed out. I think it's been distributed. It was emailed to each of you. So I just wanted to talk on that if I could and give you a little bit. We changed the title from relating to school safety to relating to school safety environments. Okay, what we're trying to do, the first part of this bill is school safety incidents reports. This act requires every local educational agency to report to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education all school safety incidents and credible school safety threats that occur at each attendance center. If you look down there a little further, it talks about some of the things that they're looking at, limiting to all actual incidents or credible threats, shootings or other incidents or threats involving firearms, explosives, knife, or other weapons. Really, what we're trying to get at here is we want to make our kids safe. Every student should be able to go to school and feel like they're safe. Every parent should be able to send their kids to school and feel like they're going to be safe. That's a basic tenet that we should all have. So what we're going to do here is keep a record of these. So we'll have a record for our SRO officers, for other police enforcement, to see where are our problems, what kind of incidents we're having, and what can we do to try to address those. So we're trying to gather some information on these school violence, school threats, and such, so that we can address those in a timely fashion and maybe come up with a good plan to keep kids safe. That's all the bill is really about on the first part. And Mr. Chairman, I can take questions on that part and then do the other, or if you want me to do the whole thing, I can do the whole thing.
Just go ahead and do the whole thing.
Okay? The second part of it is dealing with cell phones. Okay? And what we're trying to do here is this act requires school districts and charter schools to adopt a written policy governing students' use of electronic personal communication devices, AI, cell phones. The policy shall be designed to promote students' educational interests and provide a safe and effective working environment for the school staff. At a minimum, the policy shall prohibit students from using devices during scheduled instructional activities, outline disciplinary actions for policy violations, and provide exceptions for device use in emergencies, for instructional purposes, or when authorized under federal law as provided in the Act. The policy shall be published on the school district or charter school website, and school employees or volunteers will be protected from liability when acting in good faith. So let's get at the bottom of why we're wanting to do this. Doing a little bit of research, they say that during the school day, the average student is on their cell phone about an hour and a half. I looked out when we were doing this hearing here, and cell phones have become such a big part of what we do, and over half the people in the audience behind me were on their cell phones a while ago, just kind of looking out there. And it's become such a part of our whole community, but these kids are still there to get an education. And I'll give you 3 things that I'm really concerned about. Instructional loss. If they're on the cell phone an hour and a half a day, they're losing instructional time. 2, cheating. We know what's going on. They're cheating by using their cell phones. 3rd, I'm going to make it simple, sexting. You'd probably be shocked at what some of the pictures that kids as young as 12, 13, 14 years old, boys and girls, receive on their cell phones. Does this act stop all that? No. I think it's a beginning. It's a first step to try to say, schools, you have to put this policy in effect. We're going to start trying to take back some of our instructional time, and we're going to try to keep these kids a little bit safer. That's what the whole bill is about. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? No, seeing none. Thank you very much. Anyone? Can I get a show of hands for and against on this bill? Only one? Okay. All right. Anyone to testify in support, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. We just want to go on record in support of the bill, in particular the portion about having policies on cell phone restrictions in classrooms. It's a major distraction for teachers in classrooms all across the state, headphones also. So appreciate the leadership in trying to address that and support our teachers. Happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate it. Anyone to testify in support? Anyone else? Okay, anyone to testify in opposition? Seeing none. Anyone to testify for informational purposes only? Okay, we have one.
My name is David Lee Brush. I'm with the Missouri Equity Education Partnership Action. I'll fill out a second form in a minute. When this bill came up in the House, we noticed that one of the exclusion and the carve-outs for exceptions to cell phone use were things like IEP students and 504 students for health care. There was a group that was left out. Those are ESL students. They very often use their cell phones as translation devices when they're new to country, plus other apps they have to be able to help them navigate. And we just want to ensure that they are included in the carve-outs in the bill. I haven't seen the sub to know if they are or not, but we provided language to the House, and we'd be happy to do the same for the Senate. Thank you so much.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for informational purposes only? Okay, seeing none. Senator, do you have closing remarks?
Thank you for hearing the bill. I'd be happy to look into that language for English second language learners, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 68. We'll go to Senate Bill 71. Senator Gregory, proceed when you're ready. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chairman Bratt, members, Bratton,
That's my wife.
members of this great committee, David Gregory, Senate 15, St. Louis County. Before you is Senate Bill 71, the Public Safety Recruitment and Retention Act. Yesterday I distributed the most recent sub ending in 05C, if you have that in front of you. Very briefly, this bill seeks to provide free tuition, college tuition, to police, firefighters, and other public safety personnel, as well as their dependents. The police, fire, and public safety personnel themselves will qualify after 6 years of service, and then their dependents will qualify after that safety personnel's 10th year of service thereafter. It's important to note that this bill does have a zero fiscal note, and it's because we have created a fund that pays for this tuition, and if that fund runs dry, then there would be no additional cost to the schools. So our schools will have a zero fiscal note, and our state will only have what we provide as an appropriation to the fund. And again, it's about recruitment and retention, mostly retention. We want to keep our police officers, our firefighters, and our other public safety personnel around. We want them sticking around longer. With that, I will take any questions.
Now, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Anyone to testify in support? How many do we have? Just show of hands. Okay, we have several. If we could,
Mr. Chairman, they're trained to keep it very brief.
okay, yeah, if we could, we've got 1 hour and we still have another bill as well.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Joe Patterson, Executive Director, St. Louis County Police Association. I'll probably go the longest. I'm going to keep it under about a minute and a half. I promise. Recruitment and retention is at a critical mass in the state of Missouri. I have the fortune and honor to represent the men and women of the St. Louis County Police Department. We're the most populous county in the state of Missouri. We're the economic engine of the state of Missouri. Our department is well-funded, well-trained, well-equipped. I have 200 officers less than what I had in 2019. We can't get them. Not only can we not get them, we can't keep them. So as a good leader and a good steward of my membership, we try to address ways, what can we do to fix this? There was a appropriation that was made to us through ARPA funds to fund a daycare system. We found out that our goal to have 30% of our officers be women by the year 2030 was failing because young women would become police officers and then a few years into the career wanted to be mothers, and then child care became an issue. And unfortunately, police officers don't make enough money to where daycare would be economically smart for them. So we got through that issue. We're very happy for this body and the House supporting that, as well as Governor Parson. Now we're on to the next big problem. It's education. These folks want to send their kids to school. They want to further their own educations. So on the recruitment aspect of it, there's education that's needed. These firefighters will come up behind me and talk about the prerequisites they have to be firefighters in Missouri. Some of these kids in rural Missouri from low socioeconomic families and communities, they simply can't afford the fire academy. It's not a matter of willingness, it's a matter of money. So I think it's incumbent upon the state. We've got good, hardworking, honest Missourians that want to come and serve and protect, prepared to put their life on the line. It'd be nice to get some support for those. I really appreciate Senator Gregory's leadership on this. He spent a ton of time researching the issue with police officers, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and public safety dispatchers. And then on the retention side of things, I look at it as twofold. Let's say you have 20 years on and you're eligible for retirement, but you got 2 girls in high school. You may hang on for another 5 or 10 years to get those 2 girls through high school. Now, I want my guys to retire healthy and happy and go play golf, but at the same time, we don't have enough new guys coming in, so I need those old guys to hang on for a little longer until we try to get our hands on this problem. And then the other part I like about the bill that I don't want to get overshadowed as a benefit of the first responder is the recipients that are dependents of this bill. We're going to hook them in the state of Missouri for 5 years afterwards. So these folks, if they decide to take a job in California and move out of town, that's fine. They're going to pay this money back. What I like about it is that will hopefully culture future generations of first responders. But even if they decide they want to be a construction worker or something, whatever, they're going to be construction in Missouri, paying Missouri taxes, building Missouri families. So with that, I'll answer any questions. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any questions? See none. Thank you for your testimony. Next in favor. Please remember to fill out a witness form.
Mr. Chairman, gentlemen of the committee, good morning. My name is John Duffy. I'm a firefighter paramedic with the Community Fire District in St. Louis County. I'm also business manager for the Professional Firefighters of Eastern Missouri, Local 2665. I'd like to give you a little insight into how over the years recruitment has dramatically decreased in the fire service. I've been a firefighter for 24 years. In 1999, when I first started to get into this, St. Louis County Academy had what they called a lottery system to get in. It started off with hundreds of people just waiting in line hoping to be a part of this system. Then those lucky enough would go to the gym, stand around with a couple hundred people and hope that their names would get picked. If you didn't get called, you would wait until the next time and hope your name would get picked. Some waited years and never even had the chance to attend the academy. The top departments in the area could have as many as 200 people applying for just a single job. Even departments with lower pay could easily have 50 or 60 applicants. It was not uncommon to spend several years trying to get a job as a firefighter. As the years passed, we were seeing less and less applicants. Most departments feel lucky if they can get enough applicants. Recently, the Blackjack Fire District increased the time they were accepting applicants because they had more job openings than applicants. Brentwood Fire Department no longer requires a minimum test score due to the low numbers applying. The Monarch Fire District has decided instead of hiring to fill all the spots they have, to spread it out over a year and a half to 2 years to ensure they can get the applicants they need. Crestwood recently received only one applicant. Frontenac's last hiring period, they received one applicant and they didn't even have the minimum qualifications. The Academy no longer has a lottery system. What they have is a list, and it's short. We used to be in a competition to make sure your department hired the best to serve your citizens. Now it's become a race to get a warm body in that spot. The reasons for the low numbers are varied, but one thing I know is the public deserves quality individuals in these spots. We need to recruit and retain the best, and I believe this bill is a step in that right direction to ensure our citizens have the best when they call 911. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none. Next in favor, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, Committee, good morning. Deputy Chief Joe Grignani, representing St. Charles City Fire Department. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of this bill. In the last 10 years, we've lost 30 firefighters before the age of retirement. Put that in perspective, we have 79 firefighters on our department. Also, the 20 years prior to that, we lost 0 firefighters. It costs us around $12,000 every time we start a new firefighter. That doesn't include the countless hours of training it takes to on-ramp them. Typically, these firefighters leave within their first 2 or 3 years of employment. How that's affecting us today is I have days that I have enough firefighters on the truck, but I don't have anyone qualified to know how to drive it or to be a captain on that truck. Because every time someone leaves, we restart that clock of their development. Complicating the problem even more is, as the previous gentleman stated, is the recruitment problem. We used to have over 100 applicants. Now we'll put out that we're going to be hiring 4 to 5 people, and we'll get 20 applicants. Of those, 5 to 10 will meet the qualifications. Most times than not, when we do a hiring list, within a month of having it, it's already exhausted, and we're having to redo another hiring list. That adds another cost factor for us. Ultimately, it's becoming less and less sustainable, and we're trying to become more and more creative of how we recruit people while ensuring that they meet all of our minimum standards. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness in favor. Welcome. When you're ready, state your name and begin, please. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dan Clark. I am the president of the St. Louis Firefighters Local 73. I am also an 18-year firefighter with the City of St. Louis. Just wanted to thank you, Mr. Chair, and the committee for allowing me to speak. We are in favor of this bill. I'd like to thank Senator Gregory for doing the work on this. My brothers in blue and red have pretty much covered what's going on. I will just give you some history on what I've seen. When I came on, there was about 5,000 applicants to become a firefighter in the city of St. Louis. That has progressively got worse. Our last go-around, we had around 990 apply. Through that process, just under 400 actually passed the test. So this is something that's happening everywhere. This is a good creative measure to try to bring people in and then hopefully retain them. I'll keep it short because I know you guys are busy. So,
thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness to testify in favor. Begin when ready.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Brent Hemphill. I'm here on behalf of the Missouri Ambulance Association. Appreciate the previous witnesses. So I represent many of the ambulance districts from the rural parts of the state. This would be a huge incentive. I can assure you that the burnout rate for paramedics, at least in our organization, is 9 years. And we have got to provide incentives to fill that. And we have a huge need in all parts of the state for these kinds of opportunities. So I want to go on record in support of the bill.
Thank you. Any questions? See none. Anyone to testify for support?
Good morning. My name is Chris Hoffman. I'm here representing the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. I've been there 26 years, raised a family, 2 daughters, Mackenzie and Emily. I think we have a unique time right now to help with all the sacrifices and burdens that our first responders do shoulder, one of those being education for them and their dependents. For quality hiring and retention now and in the future, I and the Sheriff's Office support this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none. Appreciate it. Anyone else testifying support, please come forward. Remember to fill out a witness form.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Scott Penman here representing the 911 folks in the state of Missouri, the State 911 Service Board, 911 Directors Association, MOENA, and MOAPCO. We're thrilled to be able to be in a position to support this legislation. A couple of years ago, the legislature included 911 telecommunicators in their definition of first responders because it recognizes the truth that we are the first responders. So we really appreciate the Senator's effort and happy to try and answer questions.
Now, thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Trent Ford, registered lobbyist for the Ambulance District Association of Missouri. I'd like to go on record in support. That's how you do it quick.
That's how you do it. There we go.
That was great.
Thanks, Senator.
Any questions? Seeing none. Anyone else testifying support, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Chief Chris DiGiuseppe from the Law Enforcement Legislative Coalition and Missouri Police Chiefs Association, here today to support Senate Bill 71. Myself, along with other law enforcement leaders, have been working with Governor Kehoe on his crime plan with the mission to reduce crime. One of the key elements to achieve this objective is having our police departments fully staffed. At this time, recruitment and retention of police officers is extremely challenging, and an educational incentive is a major piece in attracting quality candidates into the law enforcement profession. Additionally, as turnover within police agencies becomes more frequent, we often see that officers are rising through the ranks at a faster pace than usual, and the need for higher education is essential. So we ask you to please move this legislation forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? See none. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Anyone else testifying support, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Jay Schroeder. I'm president of Missouri Fraternal Order of Police, and I just wanted to go on the record in support of this bill. I think it's going to be outstanding for law enforcement to help with our recruiting and retention. And I will stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions? See none. Appreciate the quick testimony. Anyone else testify in support?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is John Barget. I'm here appearing on behalf of the Missouri Community College Association in support of Senate Bill 71. I'd like to thank the Senator. He's worked with us on this bill. I think it'll be a great thing for us to get passed.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions? See none. Anyone else to testify in support?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Senators. Tom Dempsey, registered lobbyist for the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts. We thank Senator Gregory for his sponsorship. We want to go on record in support of the bill. We think it would help people go into a life of service in public safety. Thank you.
Now, thank you for your testimony. See no questions. Anyone else testify in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Jared Hankinson, representing the Missouri Chamber of Commerce, here to testify in support of the bill. We think this is fantastic legislation. Not only accomplishes one of the recommendations that was put forward in the Missouri Chamber's Safer Missouri, Stronger Missouri report from a few years ago of taking proactive steps to stabilize and grow the first responder workforce in the state of Missouri. We also think that it is great legislation, excuse me, that gets on top of stabilizing the workforce in Missouri as this does apply to some of the dependents of these first responders as well. So for those reasons, we're in support and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? See none. Thanks for your testimony. Anyone else in support?
Good morning.
My name is Robert Shockey. I'm the Executive Director of Missouri Police Chiefs, retired police chief after 43 years. We represent almost 600 police departments across the state, and we actually offer a scholarship once a year for two siblings or two children of police officers in the state. Our application process is really short, and we get an abundance of applications every year. Unfortunately, we can only fund 2. This would be great for police officers and police departments across the state, not only the bigger cities, but a lot of the smaller departments across our state. The officers only make minimum wage, under $15, $16, $17 an hour. Be able to send their kids through school. This would be a great bill for them and help support keeping them into the law enforcement career.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else to testify in support?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Paul Wagner. I represent the Council on Public Higher Education, the presidents of our regional universities and State Technical College. I'd just like to go on record in support, along with our community college colleagues. Appreciate the sponsor working with us to improve the bill, and happy to answer any questions. Oh, I also wanted to say, it's always good when you hear that higher education is such a strong recruiting tool, that our law enforcement and EMT and police put such a value in higher education, that it's important to them, and I'm always glad to hear that.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in support?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dusty Schneiders. I am a government liaison for the University of Missouri system, and I just want to go on the record in support. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else to testify in support? All right. Anyone to testify in opposition? Wow. Informational purposes only. See none. Senator, closing remarks.
I close.
Great. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing. And on 71, we're going to move into mine. I'm going to hand the gavel over to you, Senator.
All right, we will now hear Senate Bill 115, sponsored by Senator Bratton. Mr. Chair, you may begin when you're ready.
I'll let everybody kind of clear out for a second. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Rick Bratton, 31st Senatorial District, Cass Johnson Bates, bringing forth Senate Bill 115 before the committee. This is one of those things that I've actually, this is, I think, number 5 that I brought this bill forward. It has had some revisions to it, but this would put an end to divisive topics like CRT, DEI type practices, as well as the teaching of revisionist type history curriculum like 1619 Project, those sorts of things. It would also not just say that these sorts of things could not be taught, but it would also ensure, like with history, that things like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, Federalist Papers. Let me get to the list here of things that would be encouraged to be taught and adopted as the curriculum. Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, the transcripts of Lincoln-Douglas debate, writings of the Founding Fathers, Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 13th, 14th, 19th Amendments, these sorts of things to be taught. I know there's been a lot of hate and vitriol that's kind of come from both sides on in regards to the subject matter, but in reality, we don't need our kids being taught these sorts of divisive topics. And CRT, as we've even heard in a prior bill, really brings up a lot of vitriol in the way things are being taught. And this would just basically, it puts forth in the bill, and I can get into the nuts and bolts of how it would operate, but it would allow for the State Board of Education, the Attorney General, to have that capability to ensure that these things are being taught and are not being taught. But then also another portion of the bill would be that we're allowing parents to have access to what exactly is being taught. So that's the Sunshine and Learning Act would be a portion of this, and the Parental Bill of Rights, ensuring, I think that would be the best way and the best process to ensure that these sorts of topics aren't being taught, is giving full access and transparency to all curriculum and all subject matter that's put before the students and before their children, to ensure these topics aren't being taught. And if they are, it gives that capability for parents and everyone involved in ensuring that a good quality education is happening, to be able to address that and have a say and call it to light. So, I mean, that's basically the crux of the bill, what it entails. I'd be happy to answer any question. I'm sure we'll have ample testimony as to both sides of this topic. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the bill sponsor? Senator Nernberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Senator.
Morning.
As you mentioned, we'll have plenty of folks to weigh in on this, but we've had different iterations of these bills the last few years, and I was in the classroom for 13 years until 2020, when I entered the General Assembly. And one of the things I continue to hear from teachers, and certainly I heard it during my time there, is just really the fear of having so much scrutiny over everything that they consider teaching, especially when it comes to current events. One of the things that we started doing early on was trying to share as much and wanting that parental involvement and putting everything out there. And I think most school districts, especially those who have the means and have different dashboards, have that right now. They want to make sure that parents and guardians are as involved as possible. I remember even, like I said, this is 10 years ago, we had access for parents to be able to sign on and have a parent code so they could go on into all of my classes and see exactly what I was doing. But one of the things that teachers continue to share is that they have so much going on right now. I mean, I had 8 different preps as a high school teacher. I taught 8 different courses in 6 periods. So sometimes I taught 2 in 1. And this is any of these type of bills that really seek to undermine authority of teachers is simply the final nail in the coffin. We are seeing teachers exiting at a rapid rate, truly a mass exodus in education. One of the things I really appreciate from the current commissioner especially is recognizing just how much we need to ensure that teachers feel supported. And yes, I start with, we want parents to be as involved as possible. I am very supportive of all the sunshine and education type things, but again, at what cost to teachers? And I was going through this. I had those moments of, okay, I need to do this within 24 hours. I need to do this within 48 hours. This needs to be done here. And again, there's just a lot placed on these individuals that are just trying to do their best to educate the students to the best of their ability. And then when any issues do arise, I look at what burden this would place on our local prosecuting attorneys who are tasked with, quite frankly, some really challenging times right now. And they've got a lot of things that they are dealing with, from the most egregious crimes out there to property theft that they want to get a hold of. Same thing with our Attorney General. And I'm just kind of curious as we go through on these conversations as what we can do to continue to incentivize and aid school districts in making sure that they have portals available for parents, whether that's through appropriations or grants, if folks aren't able, or school districts aren't able to do that now. We want to do that. But at the time, again, just with those concerns of an undue burden on folks that are just trying to stay in the classroom and educate our future generation.
No, and I totally agree with that. I mean, the crux of the bill, and my intent is not to burden the teachers. You know, I see this more falling in line of your administration and your school board of having to adopt these sorts of policies. But I agree. I mean, it's not an attempt to try to make the teachers out to be the bad guy or caught in the middle. I just want to make sure that we're adopting these sorts of parameters in which kids are educated. But I would happily try to work with you to see how we can try to make something like this a workable, work towards a workable solution with that. So now, as for we do this with basically any and every law that we pass. We have to give some manner of teeth. Do I see, honestly, a lot of this going to the local prosecutor or even the AG? I really don't, but I think there has to be that level of potential teeth to let these districts know that we mean business and that we want to ensure that these sorts of topics, because if you read of like in the first page of the bill, it's pretty common sense in my approach that we shouldn't be teaching that one race is inherently superior to another. I mean, that's, so we didn't try to get, and that's how I tried to draft this bill, where we're not getting into like the labels of CRT or 1619, just making sure that those parameters and guardrails are in place. That way there is flexibility in the classroom and it's not, pitting everyone in this tiny itty bitty little box. But I'm not trying to filibuster my bill, I apologize. but I just wanted to say that's my vision, but I want to make it a workable solution. I'd love to work with you on that.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you for the conversation. And again, I look forward to working with you on this. I think there's some good stuff we can do in terms of making sure that parents do understand and have a good understanding of what's happening in their child's education. That improves outcomes for every student. And so I think that's a great thing. And if we can do anything to help and aid school districts in being able to have some of those tools, I think that sometimes can be very costly, especially when it comes to small school districts, help them there. That's something certainly that I'd like to partner with. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, could I see the hands of everyone that wants to testify on this bill in favor, opposition? Okay, we got several hands out there. I'm going to ask you, we got about half an hour, so please be as brief as you can. Make sure you got a witness form filled out. Please don't feel the need to repeat points that have already been made. We will start testimony in favor. Who's the first person that would like to testify in favor of this bill?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, James Harris representing FGA Action, here to testify in support of Senate Bill 115. Most of my remarks in support will be kind of pertaining more to the Parents' Bill of Rights in section 161.1140 and not some of the other parts in section 167.177. I think kind of promoting parental involvement's good. I think a member of the committee had a good point. Sadly, as my kids get older, I've seen sometimes there's a problem with parents. It's society. Sometimes I've noticed in my daughter's class that parents flip out and they want to blame the teacher. Sometimes they don't know that maybe you have to go, does this rise the level of emailing the teacher? Because they're always in life we're going to confront things that are inaccurate. Like a teacher told my daughter something in theology class that was factually inaccurate. We just had a conversation about it. Didn't rise the level of, do I send an email? Kind of annoyed my wife and I. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean we should try to restrict information. I think the Parents' Bill of Rights and stuff, giving parents more information to hopefully help them be more engaged with their children, knowing what's going on is good. I think sadly in society as things go faster and faster, sometimes it's harder for parents to know everything that's going on. My wife Is probably the rare person that's going through the backpack every day, having the conversation, stuff like that. But why this stuff matters, I think, if you look at the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is known as kind of the nation's report card, it has shown that Missouri children's reading scores have gone down again, and we're now below the national average, and that's alarming. 27% of fourth graders and 26% of eighth grade students scored proficient or above. And so what's my point is I think having more information can hopefully spur conversations about, there's only so many hours in the day. Can all this fit in, or some of this stuff would be nice if we had a 12-hour school day, which we don't. I'm not advocating it. But maybe it's not as important as the basic things. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness to testify in favor. Anyone else that would like to testify in favor of this bill?
Good morning, I'm Timothy Faber, and I'm in favor of the entire bill, but I especially like the sunlight in learning portion because parents are the ones who are ultimately responsible for educating their children. Both of my parents were school teachers. They did so in the days before computers. I can remember my dad sitting up late at night grading papers and writing lesson plans, but he was always very open with the parents anytime anybody had questions. Computer technology makes that easier, and there's really no reason not to use it. So keeping the parents informed about what their children are learning and the curriculum that's being used, I just think is a kind of a no-brainer. And I would also think that any school that would try to hide such information is suspect. So.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness in favor. Who else would like to testify in favor of this bill? All right, seeing no one. Who would like to testify in opposition of this bill?
Senator Brad? Good, thank you. Nimrod Chappell on behalf of the Missouri State Conference. I can tell you that there are a lot of issues that this bill brings up. I mean, in particular, that we are going to take away the academic freedom that belongs to educators to ensure that they bring forth lessons plans that are improved by the district, that are in line with the educational opportunities that should be offered at an institution. As a child also of educators, I think that that's important. Generations of educators have not only sought the training, but worked hard and diligently to be able to provide accurate information. Here, we're not restricting information on the basis of whether or not it's true. We're just trying to decide whether or not we like it, right? To purposely exclude, in law, teaching any information related to 1619, which is really just a historical perspective on America, seems ridiculous. I mean, especially coming from a state like Missouri, who has such bad history, right? First state in the United States to ever have a travel advisor issued by the NAACP. I think that says something, because you have a whole group of citizens who have historically and are currently disenfranchised, treated so bad by the government that they fund with their tax dollars that we were put on par with Myanmar. Right? Doesn't matter whether you're driving down the street because you can't have your rights to go where you need to go. Doesn't matter whether you're in school or whether you go to the hospital. Your outcomes are quantifiably below everybody else in the state. Now just let that sink in. At the same time that we recognize these historic disparities, right, we take away a bridge to prosperity under Governor Parsons' revocation of the executive order in the face of the disparity study that showed that there are significant limitations on the ability of minorities, all minorities, blacks, women, disabled, veterans, everybody, to participate in state-funded contracts to the tune of about $1 billion. So where am I going? What I'm telling you is that Missouri has a whole bunch of problems and that this is not the fix. We're talking about shining a light on the ability of parents to participate in the educational process. Let me tell you what parents want. They want to get what they paid for. They want to be able to send their kids to public schools and get a fair education, one that doesn't hold back entire segments of history, right? You know, I picked up my youngest kid's 5th grade history book, 4 pages dedicated to slavery. 4 pages. Now, do you think that the impact of slavery on the United States, or even in Missouri, or even in mid-Missouri, should be limited or could be limited to 4 pages? It doesn't even make sense. And half of those were pictures. Now, ratchet that up and you think about what it is that we're trying to shine a light on. If we want educational attainment for the Missourians to actually be an issue, then we should spend more money on education, not less, to make sure that rural and urban schools are funded on a real funding mechanism that makes sense, not that thing that we have currently in effect in this state. If we want parents to be engaged, it's not by shining a light supposedly on what they're learning in school, because any parent can still pick up the books just like I do for my kids to ensure that I know what they're talking about. Maybe we spent more time reading to the kids, providing after-school and before-school programs for all children to ensure that they have an opportunity to understand the information that's being presented to them, to provide fair, free, and reduced lunches on an equivalent basis without shaming the kids, to ensure that they can at least have something in their belly so that their minds can focus on the information, and we can participate in the national and global economy that is quickly leaving us behind. You pass this bill and I tell you what's going to happen. 2 or 3 things. One, you're going to promote litigation. Now, as a lawyer, I'm okay with that because I believe in the judicial system and I believe that that's the way that society should work, just like you should pay your taxes. But the second thing that you're going to do is you're going to ensure that an entire generation gets along worse. Now, we know from an economic standpoint that the important thing for societies, communities, states, whatever, to be able to do is to have a healthy, educated public that gets along. Missouri is failing in all 3. This doubles down on the failing part. You're going to ensure that an entire generation, generations of kids, have no idea on how to address historic disparities, how to treat each other with kindness and respect, or how to even love each other, as we've been taught to do. I think you can do way better than this.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
Next person to testify in opposition of this legislation.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. We'll be very brief, speak to our opposition. I think we would first, kind of broadly speaking, caution the committee to consider what the comments that Senator Byrne made. We've had a concern all these years that legislation of this type is likely to have an exacerbating influence on the challenges we're facing in teacher recruitment and retention. We've actually seen in this last year a little bit of progress with the passage of language from sponsored by Representative Lewis that ultimately went into Senate Bill 727 on teacher pay. We've seen some increases in some of the indicators we look at in terms of students coming in to become teachers and how districts are able to hold on to their teachers. These kinds of bills, especially in the kind of in the form that we see right here in Senate Bill 115, likely to really kind of have a heavy effect on teachers wanting to be in, what we really are seeing is in the face of our teachers is the issues like in the previous bill, talking about cell phones, headphones, distraction, disruption in the classroom. That's the day-to-day that teachers are really dealing with. But if maybe the Senate committee is not as familiar with this, but the House committee a couple of years ago spent about a dozen weeks hearing many different variations of this bill. There was a lot of testimony, a lot of conversation about the language. One of the things that came out of that was that the House committee really stayed away from anything that says in state law, schools shall not teach, and then use the word concept. For example, this bill has some of that language, says schools shall not teach divisive concepts. Divisive concepts includes the idea that one race is inherently superior to another. Well, there have been occasions in human history, for example, Nazi Germany and the Third Reich, where that was something that was a concept in the culture. So the committee chose to avoid anything that says shall not teach about and then use the word concept, because it ends up invariably being profoundly overbroad and very problematic for instruction. So there's a lot of work that could potentially be done. We've been involved with folks on the House side, less work on the Senate side thus far, but if there's interest in that, our association stands ready to discuss what this language should, if anything, look like. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness to testify in opposition to this legislation. I'm going to ask witnesses to please keep their testimony to 2 minutes or less. So we need to wrap this up. We want to give you all the chance to talk, but we're on a time constraint here. So proceed, please.
Better, Mr. Chair. Sharon Galway-Jones here today on behalf of Promo, Missouri in opposition to the bill. I'm not going to retread ground. I just want to also point out that this bill contains some language regarding trans athletes and or, as the bill defines it, men playing on teams reserved for females. That's language that we've already dealt with in the state of Missouri. We don't need to be retreading that ground, and we would ask that we keep this bill to its original intent and not spread it out too far.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness to testify in opposition.
David Lee Brush with the Missouri Equity Education Partnership, and we are opposed to this bill as we have been every time the bill like this has come around since 2022. I'm not going to retread ground either, but there are some parts in section 160.255 that are contradictory. How can we teach about our founding fathers without teaching civic engagement and activism? They were activists. And we're kind of concerned about the word morals. What are the morals of the United States? What morals were at play with enslaved labor, with the Indian Removal Act, with women's suffrage? And how can we talk about the country, the structure of our country with our students if we can't talk about, we can't talk about that without talking about who created the structure and how it was created. We aren't responsible for the past, but we are responsible for the present and the future, and we are still dealing with systems that were put into place in Reconstruction. The founding documents that are listed excludes very important documents like the Dred Scott decision, the Emancipation Proclamation, the writings of Frederick Douglass, the suffragettes, and Dr. King, and all those are kind of oddly all marginalized people. In section 161, the Parents' Bill of Rights, section 161.114, most of these rights already exist. I was a teacher for 25 years. These rights exist, parents just have to activate them, and there's nothing in this bill that applies to private schools or FPEs, which might receive state funding through 727, and that's going to create an accountability disparity between public schools and other schools receiving public money. And the punitive part of this bill is going to drive people out of the classroom. The punitive part for the database bill, part of the bill, is absolutely draconian. And a lot of the, like Representative Nuremberg said, a lot of these things are already in place, but the section on the materials portion, the database, could lead to a lot of micromanaging on the parts of teachers, and that's all we've got. Thank you.
All right. Your time has expired. You got a lot in that 2 minutes, didn't
Hey,
you?
listen, I was a 1AR.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness in opposition.
Good morning. I'm Amy Hammerman. I'm a volunteer with National Council of Jewish Women, and I'm here in opposition to this bill. Instead of retreading prior ground, I just thought I would highlight some concerns that we have given the overbroadness of the definitions in the bill. For example, we have seen that other similar actions, I will say, have caused a chilling effect, particularly with regards to punitive enforcement of this bill. We are concerned that schools and school districts, in an effort to prevent themselves from being at liability for being in violation of this bill, will do things like eliminate programs like Girls in the Know that support girls in schools, or the Jewish Student Union, which supports Jewish students in schools, or just as an example, from my own public school district, we have a program called the Meacham Scholars that is open to all students in the middle school, and they focus on teaching Black history in St. Louis. And while there is certainly no intent to teach any child that they should feel guilty, collectively guilty for history, teachers are not necessarily in charge of how students feel when they are confronted with history that is deeply uncomfortable, and we are concerned that trying to forestall violation of this bill will cause programs like this to end when they have been extremely successful and enriching for our students. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness to testify in opposition, please come forward.
Hi, Senators. Tori Schaefer on behalf of the ACLU of Missouri. I've been speaking on behalf of the ACLU for the past 4 years, and I think every year have spoke against this bill. One year you got to give me a bill that I can testify in support of. Everybody's pretty much covered the points from before. I did want to add that my mom and both my mother-in-law are public school teachers. They've been teaching for nearly 30 years, and they get asked all types of questions from kids. You can never predict what's going to come out of a first grader's mouth. And I think a recent experience that one of those folks have had is, getting asked about like a Super Bowl Sunday show. Why did Kendrick Lamar say 40 acres and a mule? And my question is, if my mother were to answer that question for a student and that conversation were to end up talking about reparations, or maybe some folks believe that it would touch on critical race theory, would she be in violation of this bill? Would that put her public school at risk of losing funds? So I think scenarios like this are really important. Like I said, you can't predict what a kid's going to say. And in previous years, we have also provided a bunch of case law on the importance of academic freedom and expression, and we're happy to provide that again for the committee. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Next witness in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Harris on behalf of the Missouri State Teachers Association, go on record against the legislation, specifically the Sunlight and Learning Act. We just want to make sure that an excessive administrative burden isn't placed on our teachers, and we feel like as currently written that would do so. And happy to work with you and the members of the committee to make sure that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for testimony. Next witness in opposition. Is there anyone else here to testify in opposition to this bill? Seeing no one. Is there anyone here to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing no one. Senator, would you like to give some closing remarks?
Yeah, just briefly. So I know in the testimony everybody's saying we can't talk on divisive concepts. The bill is hinged upon the word in the very first sentence, concepts that promote the following ideas. So it's not saying you can't talk on the Hitler Youth or the terrible history of racism. It's saying that you can't promote these divisive topics that are listed. That's all that it's stating, that it can't be a promotion, that this is good ideology. That's what this bill hinges upon. So I think there's a lot of non-clarity, I guess, muddying of the water of what this bill does, but it's not promoting these divisive concepts. So that's where I think that we kind of lose the reservation on saying that we can't speak on these, because we could. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. That will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 115. Mr. Chair, are we good to adjourn? Okay. With that, the Senate Committee on Education. Oh, yeah, I need a second for that, don't I? All right. Hearing second. With that, the Senate Committee on Education will stand adjourned.
Thank you. We don't need seconds in the House. That threw me off. I almost called Maggie representative when I called on her. I don't know if she noticed me.
Quite the downgrade, man.